Hello and welcome to the ACT Festival of Treasury Transformation. I'm proud to say that this is the second year of the festival after its successful launch as a virtual event last year, when we were all still getting used to the pandemic and home working. So it's great to see almost 1,000 of you from around the world joining us online once again. We have 3 fantastic days of live and on-demand content lined up, and each day will have its own theme around transformation. Today's theme is transforming payments, looking at payments in general and digital currencies. I'm particularly excited about our keynote session just after this, when I'll be talking to Magnus, Falk, CIO advisor at Zoom, on how the company has reshaped the way we work and our economies. We then have a session on announcing a new era for payments, followed by payment risk, anomaly detection and sanction screening. After a short break, we'll return with digital assets in 2021 and beyond, which is part 4 of our popular webinar series with Arca and Copper, guiding you on a journey to an in-depth understanding of the topic. So far, over 2,000 of you have registered to watch the series, which launched in September. You can catch up on parts 1, 2 and 3 on demand in day 1 of the agenda or on the ACT website. Attending all 4 parts makes you eligible for a digital badge that you can share on your social networks to let your peers know that you are now clued up on digital assets and cryptocurrencies. This will be followed by an industry debate on, is it time to take central bank digital currencies seriously? On day 2 of the conference, where the theme is transforming operations, we'll be looking at cash management and treasury management systems. I'm particularly looking forward to talking to the Chief Executive of the CIPD and member of our advisory panel, the ACT's advisory panel, Peter Cheese, about leadership insights on digital and other transformation in the new world of work. The theme of our final day, day 3, is transforming mindsets, looking at data and reporting, risk management, and business and behavioral skills, which are so important. I'm particularly looking forward to the session on building an FX function for 2022, as well as the final session of the day on shaping the next generation of Treasury teams. We're also announcing our 2021 prize winners, student prize winners this week. They're the students who've scored the highest marks for each of our qualifications this year, and we'd like to congratulate them all on their achievements. Jeff Snyder is our ACT Student of the Year, having completed the Advanced Diploma, our master's level qualification, with distinction. Alex Rutherford, Katie Miller, and Charlotte Thorogood are our other winners for the Diploma, the Certificate in Treasury, and Cert ICM, the Certificate in International Cash Management, respectively. Their stories are showcased in the December issue of The Treasurer, and there's also an on-demand session available to hear from them directly, which is really, really a good watch. So do look at that, and congratulations to all of our prize winners. Please do try and join the other sessions I've mentioned here, but if you can't, they'll go on demand at the end of each conference day. I'd like to take this opportunity, of course, to thank our sponsors: Arca, Cash Analytics, Cashforce, Copper, Eka, Ion Treasury, Cantox, Kyriba, Miltech FX, NS Knox, OnBrain, Cerula, and Treasury Spring, without whose support none of this would be possible. You can find all sessions taking place today and throughout the 3 days of the festival on the Agenda Live and On Demand tab on the left-hand side. Other tabs on the left-hand side to take note of are speakers, where you can read the speaker bios and reach out to them directly if you wish. Exhibition Hall, where you'll find the profiles of each of our sponsors and supporters, and where you can also download helpful resources to help you with your treasury and digital transformation. You'll also find the ACT there, where there's information on ACT qualifications, learning and training, plus some of our upcoming live events, including the next Deals of the Year awards returning in 2022. The deadline for nominations is just 1 week, on the 29th of November, less than 1 week. So make sure you enter your nomination before it's too late. We also have for you a discussion forum where you can engage with fellow attendees by posting your thoughts and comments, and even pictures on various topics being discussed. Attendees, that's where you can view delegates' bios and reach out to them directly if you wish. The ACT Treasury Hunt, which is our event game, where you can earn points around the platform for a chance to win up to £200 worth or equivalent of Amazon gift cards. The Treasurer magazine, where you can view and download the latest issue of the ACT's official magazine. Help and Info, which is a quick guide to your way around the platform. Social media, where you can view the ACT's social media channels and also follow the festival hashtag ACTFTT. And last but not least, surveys, where you can provide your valuable feedback on each of the sessions taking place, as well as on the festival overall, which means you get entered into a prize draw, giving you a chance to win £100 worth or equivalent of Amazon gift cards. So that was a pretty big mouthful, but hopefully that's given you some information as to how to get around the platform over the next 3 days. And I promise my intros won't be as long in future. So I'd like to move on now. I think you've got all the housekeeping except to flag up, Q&A function for this next session, which I'm really excited about. So I'm so happy to be able to introduce Magnus Falk, the CEO advisor of Zoom, who's going to join me. I think he's joined me now. There we go. And Magnus, a great welcome to you. Really looking forward to this session. When we were preparing and looking at this, there's so many things that you could talk about. You've got such a wonderful background, but I'm going to leave our audience to read your bio themselves rather than me reading it out and taking up more time. But perhaps as you introduce yourself, you can tell us a little bit about yourself in your own words, maybe something personal that we don't know about necessarily. And then you're going to talk to us about Zoom, what it actually is and what it does, in case we don't actually all know that, how it's fared over the last 2 years, including what the challenges and opportunities have been. And then you're going to share with us 3 lessons, I believe, that you feel you've learned over that period, and we'll have time for Q&A. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Magnus. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Caroline. It's such a privilege to be here. And, to put a couple of my credentials on the table, I've had a 30-year career using technology to help businesses innovate. I've worked as a CIO, a Chief Information Officer, and a Chief Technology Officer in activities as diverse as financial services and government. And as part of my portfolio career, I talk to technology and business leaders about the opportunities from using Zoom's video platform as Zoom's CIO advisor in EMEA. I'm delighted to be here, and I feel strong affinity with treasurers. One of my mentors at Credit Suisse was a career treasurer, and I know how valuable the skills that you all have are. Talking about something personal, I kicked off my career as a mining engineer. My grandfather was a mining engineer and ran Stora Kopparberg, which was a Swedish mining engineering firm, or a Swedish copper mine. And I sat on his knee and promised to be a mining engineer when I was 6, and then he died. And I took it was very difficult to change direction having done that. And then I went and did some mining and found that actually my desire to have a social life and the propensity of minds to be in quite far-flung locations didn't really correlate. So I decided to go off and do other things, and ended up in London, having first a technology career, and then moving much more into the business of technology in financial services companies. So there's a little bit about me. I'm going to talk more about Zoom though. Zoom's transformational story has really been part of how technology has reshaped the economy and the future of work. And today I'm going to talk about what's happened during this time of titanic change, some of the lessons learned, the skills honed, and more importantly, the new avenues for innovation that have emerged. And I'll discuss the opportunity in front of all of us, not only to reimagine the way we work together, but to shape the businesses of tomorrow. But first, a little bit about Zoom. Since its 2011 Silicon Valley start, the company has grown to 5,000 employees in 19 globally distributed offices. Our platform is run on 21 globally distributed data centers to handle meeting traffic. And Zoom went public in 2019 and is listed on NASDAQ. And we've had very strong and well-reported revenues, which have grown quickly. And our results at the end of the third quarter, which was announced yesterday, kept revenues above 1 billion a quarter. And we've been cash flow positive for the past 4 years. Zoom is innovative, developing hundreds of new features every year. And of course, before the pandemic, Zoom was a successful, rapidly growing provider of friction-free video. Zoom had thousands of successful businesses as clients around the world. And the company had recently been floated and was that rare unicorn, a Silicon Valley startup that was immediately profitable. And the company's prospects looked good. The share price had appreciated from the float, and Zoom was making clients and investors happy. It was a great place to work. And these usage charts were showing some really impressive growth. There were smiles all round. And then came the pandemic. The growth to 2019 barely registers, and the familiar hockey stick shape appears. The number of Zoom meeting participants had skyrocketed as the world found that Zoom could help as they reinvented their lives, the way they worked, continued their education, and of course, socialized. And Zoom's expansion was driven really by the ease of use, its cross-platform reliability, and of course, Zoom's desire to help. Zoom provided unrestricted access for free to hundreds of thousands of schools and other organizations, like helping the UK Scouts continue to do virtual scouting during the pandemic, critical things for children's well-being. And with such growth, existing clients were getting extremely nervous that Zoom was just not going to be able to expand rapidly enough. However, Zoom's founder, Eric Yuan's desire to help was a judgment that was based using his deep knowledge of the platform. As well as being the CEO, he's an engineer who had conceived the platform and knew that it was built to scale in the cloud, in theory, infinitely. And he was right. Business school and computer science students are today studying how Zoom was able to scale by a factor of 10 and then triple it again. And during the pandemic, thousands of virtual servers were being commissioned some nights. And in theory, with enough compute capacity available, everyone on the planet could be using Zoom at the same time. I'm not sure I'm advocating that. It's just a possibility. So as well as the platform allowing scaling in the cloud, it's built to be aware of what bandwidth was available and make adjustments to optimize your user experience. And that's why comparatively Zoom is a great experience to some other platforms you might have used. And today, 500,000 businesses with more than 10 employees use Zoom, from global companies to systemically important banks, from yoga teachers to telemedicine, on all continents, in all business areas. And some regard Zoom as that killer app for video. But most don't know that video meetings are just one product on a unified communications platform. Taking you through some of the other products that make up the platform, we have a Zoom phone, which is a fully fledged IP phone that's just another tab on the Zoom client with over 2 million users of that. And it's the fastest growing phone, IP phone or internet protocol phone product. We have Zoom Chat, which is an integrated chat function, providing feature-rich, persistent chat. Zoom Rooms, the same great video, just deployed into conference rooms, easy to control and allow for immersive collaboration between sites and between rooms and desktops. We've got webinars, a type of meeting that's about presenting to many and can support over 100,000 or more. And of course, events to support multi-day, multi-track conferences. We could be doing today on Zoom events. Zoom for Home, which has support for devices that boost your employees and colleagues at home. On Zoom, which is a way for entrepreneurs to host video-based services on Zoom. And Of course, we integrate with thousands of commercial applications, and we integrate with your own software through application programming interfaces and SDKs. And of course, I'm sure you're all aware of Gartner's Magic Quadrants, identifying category leaders with the ability to execute and completeness of vision. Zoom, the orange dot, has been in the leader quadrant for meetings for 6 years due to its feature-rich functionality, ease of use, and reliability. And the latest one put Zoom in an enviable position. And last year, Gartner announced its analysis of Zoom Phone, launched in 2019, and put it straight into the leader quadrant for unified communications as a service. And we believe this is the first time that a new entrant to the market appeared straight into the leader quadrant. And the latest one from Gartner confirms this position. So let's flash back to March 2020. Most of us were sent home on an email with no prep, no planning. We adapted our homes, our lifestyles, and our work to accommodate the circumstances. And the past few months have pushed the boundaries of our abilities. We've built new muscles. We've honed new capabilities. We provide our own help desks. And we've had to completely reimagine new ways to learn, to work, to live. And it wasn't so long ago that many thought that a massive work from home model just wasn't feasible. Personally, I've overseen stupid amounts of money on duplicate premises that were seldom used. The big surprise was, in general, working from home worked so well. You might say it was just the pandemic came at the right time, that everything came together, be able to facilitate it. Be as it may, many businesses reported increased productivity. 52% in December 2020 by a survey from PwC, and also reported was better well-being and more democratic workspaces. There were, of course, downsides. It's harder to separate working and personal time. Those water cooler moments, the serendipitous interactions of office life needed to be managed rather than occur naturally. And of course, not everyone's home space is great to work with. However, what was proved that work from home technology was no impediment to the future. Video had become the new audio. Collaboration from home was easy, was high quality, was feature rich. With this experience, the genie is totally out of the bottle. Staff now know what is possible, and leaders know that they know. And Zoom has learnt along with everyone else. 3 principal lessons come to mind. The first, work is going to be different going forward. Second, the customer at home needs something different. And third, we are in an era, the second era of business transformation. And I'm going to explain that much more later on. The results are in on the first lesson. The future of work is going to be hybrid. And I'm not saying that because that's what I believe, but because that's what your workforce believes. In fact, they're demanding it. According to Bloomberg, almost 39% of workers would rather leave their job if it doesn't offer them flexible work that they now require. Want to hire younger workers? That figure rise to 50% for millennials. They expect greater flexibility and autonomy in terms of how they use their time, where they work, and they're not willing to concede for anything less. And this has led directly to something called the Great Resignation, a term first coined by Anthony Klotz, professor of management at Texas A&M University. More and more workers today are exploring the possibility of quitting their jobs. And this is largely due to revelations brought on by the pandemic. People realized they were overworked, over-traveled, and they wanted to be ready. Then they were ready to prioritize their personal lives. And they're willing to make some sacrifices to find a role that gives them flexibility. Let's be absolutely clear. It doesn't mean that they don't want to apply themselves to work less or downgrade their work ethic. They just realize they want to make their personal life equally as important as their professional life, and that requires flexibility. And people everywhere have started to resign from organizations that are not willing to support a new flexible work environment. And so it's no surprise to read that according to Forrester, 70% of businesses in the US and Europe plan to operate a flexible work model. So is the future clear? This hybrid model isn't without its questions and its challenges. And managers can have a very different perspective of what a good future looks like comparative to employees. There are all sorts of questions to be answered on the ground. How do employees and managers know who's in the office and who's at home? If you're hot desking, how will people find each other? How do you put remote employees on an equal footing with office employees? How do you recreate the benefits of an office? How do you create those serendipitous run-ins, the lunchtime socialization? Do you need to? How do you resource plan if employees are coming and going as they please? And how do you build trust between employees if they aren't in the same place? So what does a hybrid model look like? Well, it's messy right now. As with any new concept, there are a lot of kinks to iron out. And there isn't a perfect way to do this that Zoom can recommend to every company. There's no one size fits all approach. Your business model, your company culture, your size, the geographies all have to be taken into consideration. Some companies are telling employees how often or which exact days to come into the office. Others are leaving it up to their employees. Some are creating universal policies. Some are creating policies that vary by role, by team, by location. We're seeing more success with companies who are flexible instead of top down. These companies are working with employees to find a better way, to discover it together, and to move forward and address the issues in real time. It's no longer a company, it's our company. And so let's talk about all of our role in helping to shape tomorrow. The first thing is you need to let go. Yesterday's, it's gone. It's not coming back. There isn't going to be a secretary sitting outside your office and your lovely team surrounding you who are there for your beck and call. That's not what they want. It might be good, have been good for you, but you won't retain them if you try and force that to continue. It's time to succeed forward rather than fail back. The employees of today and tomorrow would rather see a new world of work rather than traditional office environments. However, the awkward truth is there's not really enough leadership being shown. Assembling the available data, and it's a little patchy, but still some 30% of companies haven't laid out their strategy and approach for future workplace to their employees. 60% haven't made change to their physical office space to reflect that new strategy or approach. And most startling is 90% of all conference rooms still lack video conference capability, which is a true barrier to hybrid working or the flexibility that your employees want. Having first let go, the next three jobs are pretty straightforward: to examine, experiment, and embrace. Examining what's gone well and what hasn't is that important first step, and doing this in dialogue with teams. You'll need a fact base on which to make any first move, and most have already done something like this. Next, experiment. 12 to 18 months will continue this global experiment in work practice. We need to grip that uncertainty, start evaluating new methods for operating, and clearly set out expectations with stakeholders, employees for the steps in the process and the changes ahead. Finally, then there's the embracing new policies, practices, and technologies that are shown to enable your success. Employees will need in-office as well as work from anywhere solutions that complement each other and technology that supports it. Offices are likely to become more event-type spaces, facilitating those moments where staff do come together. There'll be less pure work done in offices and more collaboration or preparing to do real work. Flexibility is also going to be key for office layouts. None of us have a playbook for this. This is one of the greatest challenges that we're going to go through. Now, more than ever, is the time to experiment and learn from what works and adjust. So what's Zoom doing to help? Well, we're innovating like crazy. Zoom has introduced smart galleries, and here's a picture of some smart galleries. It allows multiple streams to come from a meeting room that allows cameras to capture each participant's face, which continues the tradition of video truly democratizing meetings and making these hybrid meetings possible. Last thing you want is that people in a meeting room are tiny little ants on a screen where those dialing in remotely or joining remotely are much larger. And this is a use of technology that supports the new hybrid work style. And also another fabulous innovation is companion mode, providing multi-device experience. Having participated in remote meetings, we all know that there are multiple things now happening. You have the main meeting and you have the chat happening on the side. People coming back to the office told us that the chat wasn't available in the meeting room. So we've introduced companion mode that allows in-room participants to continue to participate in all the value-added stuff like polls, whiteboarding, and of course, chat. And shortly, Zoom will provide an option to facilitate hot desking, allowing straightforward reservations, check-in, and usage. So I mentioned 3 lessons, and really I only talked about one of them today so far. But the second one is that while we've been spending a lot of time talking about employees and working from, how we work going forward, what that means is that your customers are likely to be at home as well. And customers at home need different things. And so Zoom has been working very hard to give our customers options to give their customers what they want and need. Good example, and I mentioned it earlier, in the marketing area, our webinar product has been a huge success for Zoom, which has provided serious cost-effective marketing opportunities for millions of businesses. Now, Zoom Events provides the ability to host multi-track and multi-day conferences with additional features including branded emails, surveys, recordings, analytics, and more. And it offers customizable experiences to engage and unite businesses, communities of any size. And Zoom Events is also brilliant for internal activities. Planned for early 2022, Zoom is introducing a video engagement center, a cloud-based video solution that connects businesses and customers in a new and increasingly vital way. It's going to be easy to use, as you expect from Zoom, and cloud-based, enabling experts and end customers to connect over video. And these video optimized interactions provide a new way to reach people. So you can engage with customers in a way that drives trust and loyalty, instantly bring in experts for additional support or troubleshooting, and offer perhaps digital experiences to customer from physical locations like bricks and mortar stores or digital experiences from a website or an application. The third lesson is that businesses are transforming. We've all experienced Business Transformation 1.0, which was about automation, which was about getting the human out of the loop, allowing your customers to experience your services directly through digital means. We believe that business transformation is about identifying those things that can be done virtually versus those things that have to be done physically, and rearranging your business services to allow those virtual services to flourish alongside the physical services. And we've seen iconic brands reinventing how they do business, and just a few pictures of them here. But I never imagined that cars, that houses would be sold online using video inspections and sales meetings. The whole car industry is completely changing as their customer at home expectations of their ability to interact with the market have changed. And now cars are being delivered on the backs of lorries to people never even been to a showroom. All companies are going to go through some form of transformation. It's inevitable. Your employees have changed. Your clients have changed. your competitors have changed and your business needs to change too. And we're seeing leaders embed video and unified communications in the heart of their business and applications at the moment they need to deploy them for their customers' use case. And so I know you're not all developers, but you will know developers. And our Zoom's developer platform is designed to equip your technology teams with solutions and tools and resources to easily build applications and integrations whilst choosing from a wide selection of capabilities made available by the technology behind Zoom's proven architecture. This means that you can become a fabulous provider of video, means you're a fabulous provider of audio, all through a very small bit of programming. And we've got a dedicated team to support software builders and communities to help. This positions you to transform your business at the drop of a hat. And our software developer kits give unparalleled capability to use unified communications directly from your own apps. And so your customers don't even know they're using Zoom, they're just using your app. And behind it is Zoom creating that video interaction. And one of the things that we've heard back from the developer community is make it easier and easier and easier to do this. And so React Native, you might not know what that is, but React Native is a language that allows people to build once and then deploy onto Android and iOS devices with the same code base. And we've now introduced an SDK to allow React Native programmers to use Zoom across those devices with one code base, making it even quicker for businesses to innovate. So the future's being forged right now. There's a lot to handle, especially if you want to be successful. But you don't have to do it all alone. Today's software as a service model means that technology partners are so much easier to work with. And Zoom is innovating to make the platform that is the easiest to innovate. And at Zoom, we're determined to support today's organizations as they manage new challenges through innovative cloud communications, purpose-built workspaces, and of course, relentless collaboration. So thank you so much for your time today. We'd love to have Caroline, I'm going to pass it back to you, and I expect to be quizzed within an inch of my life.
Well, absolutely. We've already got a number of questions coming through, and some very much about Zoom and some about the bigger picture maybe. I'm going to start with one because we've got time to cover them all so far, but do keep bringing your questions in. I'm going to start with one that almost reflects a question I was wanting to ask myself of you. And this one says, what surprised you most at the start of the pandemic about how your colleagues and customers dealt with the challenges faced? So it's about the surprise, anything that surprised you throughout.
I think, well, I suppose there's a surprise and negative that I was surprised how easily people just adopted the new work styles. Everyone just kind of realized they had to get on with it and did it. And so I think there was a bit of the, there was so little faff as people just elegantly moved and realized they had to do it. Because for those of us who've been involved in some ways of forcing change on organizations that were quite comfortable where they were, you know how you get the kind of stuck in the muds, the people who just, I like it this way, and can you make the old system look like the new system, or my old business process look like the new business process look like the old one, and persuading them to change is part of the art of the program or project. But in this instance, you have none of that, because everyone realized that they had to change, and they couldn't go in anymore. Boris had told them to stay at home, so this was not going to happen. And so there was the kind of Fafffree change project. It was such a pleasure.
Absolutely, and it's interesting. I think in the past, particularly with highly regulated environments or geographies, people have hidden behind that and said, well, we can't possibly have people working from home in this. security issue, and there's this, that, and the other. And it was very interesting, as certainly all our treasurers transitioned very smoothly to working from home. There were some delays in the banks, and I think personally some of that was around this idea that you really couldn't, for regulatory type reasons. And yet, a bit like vaccines, once people put their minds to things, challenges can be very, very easily resolved. So it's been a fascinating time. Now, there's a very popular question here, and I'm sure it won't surprise you at all. It's last year, there was a lot of talk about both the lack of security in Zoom, well documented, as well as the invasive data aggression of the Zoom platform. This led to organizations banning Zoom on their networks. Can you please comment on this? Have these concerns been alleviated?
Yeah, I mean, so thank you so much for asking the question. I always wonder if I do a presentation, whether to include it as a proactive, talk about security up front. And I've stopped doing it because I think this moment has passed, but it is a really good question, and I thank you for asking it. So Zoom definitely got a couple of things wrong, and in the whole focus on Zoom during the pandemic, this became absolutely magnified. I mean, all software has a few bugs, and Zoom had a few bugs. And then we also talked about our encryption in a way that security experts told us it needed to be addressed. We talked about end-to-end encryption, where it was encrypted but not end-to-end encrypted. So we kind of used marketing terminology quite badly. And of course, then we were the first into a new concept of video-based disruptions, where your uninvited guests were coming to meetings, and those three things combined to cause quite a tsunami of PR. First, the PR on Zoom was absolutely stupendous, and of course, everyone tells us that they use the word Zoom to mean a video interaction, whether they use Zoom or not. So we become the verb, which is you can argue it both ways as a good or a bad thing, but suddenly good publicity can turn to kind of difficult publicity as people want to have the full story and kind of want to discover things. And every journalist wanted to write about Zoom. And of course, there was a lot of smoke. There was some fire, but actually there was a lot of smoke created by a little bit of fire. Now, we addressed bugs very, very quickly. We're a very innovative company, and we turn around those things incredibly quickly. We addressed any thoughts about problems with encryption, and we re-released the platform for making sure that it was the leader encryption, and we've since introduced full end-to-end encryption as a meeting option, which the first and only platform that allows multiple participants to have a service free from Zoom that can give them full end-to-end encryption. And then we also stopped for 90 days any feature releases and focused 100% on security and privacy, making sure that we could hold our heads up and say we were a leader in privacy and security. And I think there was an era where perhaps we'd put usability slightly ahead of security and privacy. And this was a great wake-up call for Zoom to make sure that those two things were now equal priorities. And so everything we do comes with security and privacy absolutely embedded in. So it was a difficult period. And I understood, in talking with many CIOs and CISOs, that if you weren't already using Zoom, you might have said, oh, well, while this abates, I'm not going to make that decision. Why would I spend some time doing research in a platform and put myself in front of the board to say, I want to use Zoom when this is going on? But quite frankly, we're through that period. Since that happened, we've now, I think it's 9 out of the top 10 US banks use Zoom. We've been through code inspections from some of the leading financial services institutions. We do thousands of analysis each year in support of clients adopting our platform. Zoom is a leader in security and privacy, and we will continue to be so. So thank you so much for the question. It was a difficult period. I think we're through that. And anyone who wants to examine our security practices and our privacy practices is very welcome to do that. And we're extremely open. The one thing that I will say is that lesson on new users picking up the platform and using it for something that it took us by surprise was quite humbling. We had situations where people had adopted it for a religious service because they had to do it. They wanted to do a virtual religious service. And then, of course, they wanted to publicize that they had their virtual service online. So they put the join-in details on social media. And then they had a religious service. And quite frankly, in the physical world, they'd have had someone on the door. But in the virtual world, it was new. Why would you need someone on the door? It's only my friends have seen this on social media, but bad people turned up. And we got a lot of that. And we had to make sure that the defaults for new users protected them adequately, because previously we've been selling to businesses who configured the defaults for their businesses and made sure they use all the security features that were there to enable it. But what we hadn't done is thought that the consumer world would pick this up in such a dramatic way. So that was a kind of difficult experience, and getting it right quickly in the face of a barrage of criticism was a difficult thing to do.
Well, thank you, Magnus. Thanks. That's very reassuring, and thanks for answering that question. And it's a really fascinating question, isn't it? When you're kind of leading in things as well, and you get in the public eye. I mean, now you're faced when people are a bit tired of online, they'll talk about Zoom fatigue. So this is the problem when you're and kind of, I'm going to move on to talk a little bit more about innovation in a moment, but we innovated using Zoom for our annual dinner where people moved from table to table, and we didn't publish the link. It was embedded in an event platform, but it was hugely successful, and some of your colleagues actually joined to see how we were using it. And it's interesting, as a small organization, we're always thinking innovation. We just launched for our major conference next year in Liverpool, and we're calling it the Year of the Treasury Tiger. And it's interesting, we're constantly innovating, but then you'll always get the more commercial organizations that want to kind of dip into the treasury space, kind of copying you. And it's very difficult with that, because you have to keep ahead of the game always, and there are some downsides. And it kind of brings me on then to the next question that's got a number of votes for it, which is, how many of your innovations fail? What's the acceptable number? And if I might add, how do you ensure you keep ahead of the game?
So we are a company that's born in the internet era that uses very product-driven agile techniques in order to deliver stuff. And really, the way that we think about these is that we will always put things into beta, and we will always test it with customers in a beta situation. And there are things, I don't actually have a percentage. I'm sorry, I'd love to be able to give you a percentage, but I'm not going to make one up on the fly, tempting as it is. So we will put things into beta, we'll put them with customers, and sometimes it tends not to be this binary thing that says it failed or it didn't fail. But what you're trying to do is, and we spent lots of time listening to how customers are experiencing Zoom. Personally, I run our Financial Services Industry Council, and the barrage, the kind of stuff that always talks about the kind of, that's brilliant, but let's talk 90% about the things where you could just do a little bit more, or you change that. And so what we tend to do is understand that there is a user need, and then there's a whole series of potential ways of addressing that user need. And the question working with customers in beta is that you can see whether the ideas from the product team and the engineers actually scratch the itch that had been presented. And quite a lot of time, you think you're going to go live with something, but that particular itch wasn't yet satisfied by what you deliver, and you need to spend more time before or you need to change the direction of it. And that's, I think, the benefit of, there's something lovely about software that because you can roll it out software and software as a service, that as you can roll it out so quickly to people, you can also be quite, what's the word? You can trial things in a so much more proactive way. I mean, I really feel sorry for bridge builders and for, building, design, because once you decided to put up a building in a particular shape or a bridge for a particular distance, you can't change it halfway through. Whereas software as a service, you can try it with 5 customers. You can say, it didn't work, let's try something completely different. Or you can say, it worked partially, let's roll out that thing that we now work, but the other 4 features that we don't like. So we do an awful lot of that. In the financial services industry, we've been working with really, really systemically important players to ensure that all the video interactions that you have, all the unified communications as a service interactions you can have, can be adequately recorded and archived to meet the very high level principles around ensuring that you have a record of your your electronic media. And so even if I do something like this in a deal, if you said, will you buy such and such, and I just do a thumb up, it's got to be recorded, because that thumb up has a contractual meaning online. And so you've got to record it and archive and put it into your archiving system and be able to interrogate it, and client compliance might need to see it, and legal might need to see it at some point in the future. And so making sure that you can support the really detailed compliance use cases of the most important organizations needs iteration and work, and that's what we're prepared to do. Now, how often we fail we just don't a lot of things don't go live in their initial state because they're just not ready, and they're not perfect, and they're not going to make our customers happy.
Thank you very much. Really, really interesting. And another question that kind of carries on in kind of exploring how you innovate really is, how far out did you start planning for people returning to the office and a potential drop-off in users?
Well, I think this kind of potential drop-off of users point is kind of interesting. We have always seen that video enables different ways of doing business, and that's why I got involved with Zoom right up front, because Zoom became a platform that actually made having a meeting in a virtual way not irritating, not a 10-minute meeting tax while everyone fiddled with everything and got it right. And Zoom just allowed you to click on the link, boom, you're in the room and you're talking. And suddenly that makes it easy. A whole load of other things are possible. The ability to work remotely, the ability to put video interactions into your sales process, all that we knew was possible. And so when the pandemic came, it just accelerated this really, really quickly, and everyone got it. Everyone got it. Now I think the kind of return to office, what is that? I think the return to office implies that there were 2 things going there. You go to an office, and when you're there, you intend to do some work, but actually the intent to do some work can be done anywhere in the world. You can do it at home. You can do the work that you need to do and interact with your colleagues that that you used to do in the office. So I think we've realized that people aren't going to drop this. They're just going to use it in different ways. And our planning for the return, the hybrid work, started when Zoom was conceived, because it was absolutely part of Eric's vision to be able to allow work to be done anywhere, across platforms, across, so you can work on on your smartphone and talk to someone who's in the office, and you can talk to someone who's in a conference room, and it's the same thing that you're using, so that you're actually facilitating hybrid work. Now, as soon as people started to go back to the office, we started to get very important feedback very quickly about features that we could introduce that would make it feel better, make it feel more intuitive. And the smart gallery was, almost the first one, when people went back, and we got the my board chairman doesn't like being the size of an ant on a screen when Joe from IT is massive. You're gonna go, oh yeah, I can see that's a problem. So trying to get that smart galleries that looked and found the chairman's face and projected them into the meeting at the same size, and then followed them around. So if the chairman kind of leant over to scratch, it would follow them. And so that was a real aha moment for really adopting hybrid across a whole organization. And then the second one I talked about of, actually remote meetings where there's chat and the meeting happening all at the same time is a very rich experience. People can be saying, are you going to ask the obvious question, or shall I? Or, so there's quite a lot of interesting stuff going. People wanted it in a meeting room as well. So being able to join, but then the problem was, if you joined from the meeting room, you joined as up on the screen. So having that companion mode that allowed you to join while you were in a room, but just as a companion to the meeting, so you could get all the other functionality either on your phone or your tablet or your laptop, was absolutely scratched that particular itch. But it's meetings are always interesting to get right, and now you've now got a whole bunch of extra tools available to get right, and of course when you have tools you can go horribly wrong with them too.
Oh, absolutely. I was really thrilled when I saw that the smart gallery. I was a bit worried about the chat thing, because sometimes when you have two conversations going at once, it's tricky. But if people are using it in the way you described, then very, very handy when you're not in the same room. But that smart gallery, that was my big concern when I was, seeing people in a room together, as you say, like ants. And also knowing from some of the stuff we've been doing around coaching people and how to work in a virtual world, if you're very, very large, you're very aggressive. And if you're kind of retiring and tiny, then people see you as very quiet, not involved, So being able to use technology for that, I think, is absolutely fascinating. Now we have got a few more questions. Sorry, go ahead. Coming back
to your original person's question about failures and stuff. I mean, our clients were wanting that really quickly. So what we did was introduce 3 streams from the smart gallery, so that the room can put three things into the meeting. So with some vendors, they can slice up a particular window so you can get more than 3, but 3 was the start point. Then we'll go to 6, then we'll go to 2 cameras and 6, and I'm sure it's going to grow and grow and grow. But that's the getting it right as quickly as possible and getting some feedback from people as to whether it works or not. That functionality does need particular cameras, because it needs cameras that are very powerful to be able to catch people's face. So I think Neat, Logitech, Poly all do smart gallery enabled devices at the moment.
Oh, excellent. I'll have to investigate that further. Now, there are a few more questions, and one I'd like to bring in, but we'll try and maybe rattle through these if we may. One of the things we found in our Business of Treasury research, which we carry out every year across the globe amongst about 200 treasurers, was unprompted. They came up in their kind of in their verbal feedback. Came the point of trust. And what they were all saying was, in this virtual world, working from home, but interacting in this way, there was a real building of trust. They felt more trusted by their bosses. They felt they trusted their teams more. I just wondered if you had any quick observations on that kind of softer side of the whole technology revolution through COVID?
Yeah, these observations are very personal observations, but throughout my whole career, that if you have a default situation of give trust and give trust by default, and then expect people to value that trust, things work quite well. And of course, you get the disasters, but trust given proactively and not earned is a kind of a way of working. And I think there's something about when people had to go home that you actually had to trust them, and I think that the situation, if you think of the old world of, well, everyone can sit around the desk of the senior person and then they can watch you. And then if you become a trusted person, you might be able to work one day at home, and that then is a bit of a, oh God, got to go through some bizarre unscripted judgment process that I don't really know how to go through. But then everyone was forced to actually trust by default. You've got to go home, and we've got to find a new way to judge whether or not you're contributing. And of course, let's face it, you can hide in the office just as well as you can hide at home. I mean,
absolutely.
We've all had colleagues who found that they weren't trustworthy. But I think that this change of you've got to trust people because they are going into a home environment, and actually you'll be able to sniff out the ones you can't trust, quite quickly. I think that was quite a lesson to a lot of people.
Definitely, and that's what we hear. I've always advocated, like you, trust first. I think it's very difficult for people to even perform well if they don't feel they're trusted, because they're second guessing someone else. And I feel like, if you want a monkey, hire a monkey. If you hire somebody to do a good job, then you've got to trust them to do that. And it's the outputs rather than the inputs. So I'm delighted that you've brought that out. Now, very quickly, and it's hard to do this quickly, actually, so I'm going to set you a challenge here. Very briefly, this question is, how do you perform horizon scanning on potential risks? So could you give us just a couple of little nuggets as to how Zoom looks at horizon scanning?
Well, we've got a risk committee, just like every sophisticated business, and they will look across the board. I think a lot of our risks come from the whole cyber space. We've got a platform that, as you saw, 500,000 businesses rely on every day. We've got engineering risks, we've got operational risks, and all those things need to be part of quite a sophisticated risk management process that keeps us looking at the threats as they come in. Of course, a lot of our threats are in a changing world, or potential risks are a changing world, but I don't have a kind of particularly new or spangly process that can take your listeners to a new place in how they set them up. What my experience is, Zoom is pretty similar to other businesses that do horizon scanning, that have very flat management structures so that people can inject risks into those processes quite quickly. So for example, we've got the risks of the whole EU developing its GDPR relationships with the states, and the Schrems 2 court case, or the Schrems 2 court case, and all that whole privacy, geopolitical privacy management that is for us a kind of difficult risk to manage. And of course, those come in left field, and they come in from other blocks as well. So we have a pretty stable structure on, what's the word? A not very unique structure on horizon scanning to tell people.
Thank you very much for that, Magnus. Now, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to get to all questions today, and there are a couple more interesting ones, and one about cash flow, scalability, which of course will interest treasurers. But I'm hoping maybe after this session, maybe Cheryl, our programmer, can have a word with you, Magnus, and if you've got a few nuggets throughout, we can pop them into our discussion forum so that people can hear what you have to say that way. So it just remains for me to say thank you so much for joining us today and giving of your time. It was really, really interesting. Thanks to our audience. It's been great to have you here, even though we haven't got the same interaction as we're hoping to have it very soon again. But this, as the whole theme of this conversation, is how fantastic this is, because we have 1,000 people from around 60 countries at the moment able to join this platform, which just isn't feasible at one of our physical events. So we're really, really delighted that you could all join us here. Look forward to the rest of the week with you. Thanks once again to everyone involved and supporting as sponsors et al. Do think about social media if you want to get some messages out there, and encourage other of your colleagues to join for the rest of the week. And remember, this session, along with others, is recorded. So if somebody has missed it and you enjoyed it, do encourage them to come and listen to the on-demand later on in the day, or for the next a few weeks while we keep the platform open. Q&A, thank you so much for all those great questions. Do remember to fill out a survey so we get feedback, so we know what you like and what you'd like for the future. And then just once again, Magnus, thank you so much for joining us. Fascinating session. Really, really appreciated you being here.
Thank you very much for having me, and have a fabulous festival.
Thank you.